Pluto used to be considered a major planet, but later was reclassified into something called a dwarf planet. Something too big to be an asteroid, but too small to be taken seriously. How rude. But recently, scientists began to discuss the mystery surrounding one of Pluto's moons. It turns out it might be even cooler than all of us. It might be a double planet system. Pluto is residing in the distant Kuiper Belt. It's a vast area in our solar system, like a big rocky suburb beyond the orbit of Neptune. It's filled with small icy objects, similar to Pluto, called Kuiper objects. They're leftovers from the early days of our solar system and give us clues about how it was formed. It's where many comets come from. You already know that it's small, but it's remarkable just how small it is. Pluto has a width of about 1,400 miles. It's about half the size of the United States and smaller than our moon. Pluto's atmosphere is very thin and composed of nitrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide. Stinky. It's also very cold there, with average temperatures being around minus 390 degrees Fahrenheit. Its orbit around the Sun looks like an oval, and 1 year on Pluto takes around 250 Earth years. Pluto also shows a strange and unusual retrograde rotation because it's tilted on its axis, which means that it spins on its side. If you were standing on Pluto, you'd see a lot of high, icy mountains, valleys, plains, and craters. The Sun would be very dim and far away, and it would always look like twilight. It's a colorful planet, surprisingly. You would see a rainbow of pale blues, yellows, oranges, and deep reds. And the most adorable fact about Pluto is its famous heart, called Tombaugh Regio. Pluto was discovered super late in the 1930s, later than the rest of the planets. Initially, we thought that it's the 9th planet in our solar system. However, the more we explored the Kuiper Belt, the more we realized that it's full of these medium-sized objects. We found 4 more little planets just like Pluto: Eris, Ceres, Makemake, and Haumea. They all shared the same characteristics. And that's where we figured out that Pluto belongs to another family and created a category of dwarf planets. There are a couple of differences between these two categories. The first obvious difference is size and mass. Major planets are much bigger and more massive. They also have to be spherical, while dwarf planets might not be perfect spheres and might have weird shapes, like an egg-shaped Haumea, for example. And just like a regular planet, a dwarf planet orbits the Sun, but it doesn't have a clear orbit. Its orbit is full of debris and random objects. These are the only differences between the two. Well, as you can imagine, the reclassification sparked quite a controversy. People even made up a new term, Plutoed, which means downgraded. But although it might be sad that Pluto isn't a major planet anymore, we can look at it like a story about finding your true family. And finally, while standing on Pluto, you would see its 5 moons: Styx, Nix, Kerberos, Hydra, and the most mysterious one, Chiron, also pronounced Charon. So you can pronounce it however you like. I'm going to go with Charon. Now Charon is Pluto's largest moon. It was discovered in the 70s thanks to NASA's spacecraft called New Horizons. The spacecraft took a picture that revealed a moon with a strange and fascinating huge red-brown spot on its surface. It's a vast canyon dwarfing the Grand Canyon. It seems that both Pluto and its moon can boast interesting formations on their surface. The thing about Charon is that it's very big for a moon. It's about half the size of Pluto. This makes scientists wonder, could it be that Pluto is a double planet system? The center of mass, or barycenter, of Pluto and Charon lie outside of Pluto. Normally, with planets and their moons, the center of the planet itself should be the center of the mass, with the moon orbiting around it. But in the case of these two, it seems like they orbit each other. Binary objects are quite common in the universe. These cosmic pairs form just like our moon, from giant impact events. But double planets are exceedingly rare, and we haven't discovered any double dwarf planets yet. So, if it's true, then Charon is actually the 6th dwarf planet, and that would be our first binary dwarf planet system ever. There's also another candidate, the dwarf planet Eris and its moon Dysnomia. The solar system is full of mysterious and fascinating moons. So fascinating that some of them might not even have actual life on them. We've been talking about microscopic life in space for a while now. The debates about whether we found some organic fossils on Mars or not have been going on for decades. With the development of our technology, we're finally getting onto something. Meet Enceladus, who has stolen the spotlight since NASA's Cassini probe arrived there. Enceladus is covered in a sort of snowy blanket, which is why it's so unusually bright and has some snow-covered craters. It's small, only about 310 miles, and is mostly composed of simple rock and ice. But in 2004, we found plumes of water bursting out from this moon's south pole, which means that there's liquid water beneath this moon's icy surface. It's probably because of Saturn and its other larger moon, Dione. Their gravitational dance creates tidal forces that keeps Enceladus warm and lively. All this means that Enceladus is now a top candidate in the search for life within our solar system. Of course, life requires more than just water, and we won't find any animals there or anything like that. But we might find some microscopic organisms, and that's awesome too. In fact, Saturn is winning the lottery when it comes to life candidates. For example, scientists have a wild idea that Titan, another of its moons, might be home to extraterrestrial life as well. Titan is a frosty moon, chilling at about minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Surprisingly, it has some lakes on its surface. But don't imagine your typical water bodies. These lakes are believed to be filled not with water, but with liquid ethane or methane. Back in 2005, NASA discussed that there might be life munching on chemicals like acetylene or hydrogen in Titan's lakes. And then, in 2010, NASA investigated this moon some more. They found missing hydrogen and acetylene on Titan's surface, hinting at the possibility of something eating away at these substances. That's why some scientists dared to imagine methane-eating beings in Titan's freezing lakes. Moreover, they suggested that if these creatures exist, they probably have much larger cells than animals on Earth. What we could find there is something much bigger than a simple microbe, even something like a small animal. But Saturn isn't the only lucky one. Triton is Neptune's biggest moon. And you guessed it, it's another life candidate. It's an icy world with frozen nitrogen all over its surface and a crust made of water ice, again super chilly. However, Triton is a hotspot for geologists because it's one of just 5 moons in our solar system that likes to show off with its active geysers. It's shooting nitrogen gas up into space. That would be a cool show, if we could see that. These geysers mean that Triton has some secret source of warmth, which means that, just like with Enceladus, there might be some liquid water underground on Triton. And if this cozy spot for life does exist, we might find some organics there. Unfortunately, sending a mission to explore these celestial bodies isn't easy. The only spacecraft we've sent so far was our Voyager 2 in 1989. We need more time, money, and technology to develop spacecrafts that would be able to travel far and investigate the area beyond Mars. And even if we do, it'll take decades for this spacecraft to reach these places. In any case, let's hope that during the 21st century, we'll finally be able to fully explore our solar system and all its mysteries. Frozen plains, mountains with white peaks glistening in the distant sun, and rustic red snow. Welcome to Pluto, where nothing makes sense anymore. Looking at it from a distance, the ice ball planet is mostly predictably winter shades of white and light blue. Once you land on the surface, you'll notice familiar blue skies as well. But see that whale-shaped red stain running along the equator? Right there to the left of the white heart-shaped region, there she blows. This spot is bigger than Alaska, and it's a mystery to scientists. That's not red clay soil or anything you'll see on Earth. That's Pluto's version of ice. Scientists believe it's red because the atmosphere drops this strange soot-like chemical called tholin on the surface. It's the same stuff that explains the red cap on Pluto's moon Charon. Now, let's zoom in closer on the whale. Oh look, we have a mountain range. Yes, Pluto's red ice is like rock, hard enough to form entire mountains. Those white peaks standing out against the dark red aren't snowy caps like we have on Earth. That's frozen methane. For such a small planet, Pluto's mountains are epic, bigger than Everest and made entirely of ice. Such a bizarre landscape can't be found anywhere else in our solar system. Yeah, Pluto's a pretty harsh cold place. Temperatures there can dip to minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest ever recorded on Earth was in Antarctica, a measly minus 135. Now let's head back to the heart of Pluto. That's actually a vast plain covered in nitrogen ice. Scientists discovered that Pluto's heart makes the winds on the planet blow. Craters are also big, and some of them show signs of filling and erosion. That's something that happens right here on Earth. When land is worn away and shaped by natural forces like wind, water, and ice, that's erosion. So, what makes all this so special on Pluto? It could be evidence of tectonic plate activity. You know, big plates of land surfing on liquid rock, forming mountain chains, breaking continents apart, putting them back together. That's something scientists so far have only ever seen on Earth, not on any other planet in the solar system. Now, looks like Pluto could be more like our own planet. That, and there's water on Pluto, 1/3 of its surface in fact. But of course, it's not like Earth water. It's more like a rocky slushy. Yum. Still, no signs of life out there, at least not for now. It's taken a long time to get the little information we know about Pluto. It was first discovered almost 100 years ago and deemed the 9th planet from the Sun, until 2006 when its official planet membership card was revoked. Poor Pluto. It was dubbed the biggest dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, a region outside our solar system full of other dwarf planets and icy bodies circling the Sun. A few months before that, they launched the New Horizons mission. It was the first space probe researchers sent to Pluto in 2006. Zipping at over 35,000 miles per hour, that's 45 times the speed of sound, it still took the probe almost a decade to reach its destination. That's how far away the tiny planet is. In fact, Pluto is nearly 40 times the distance from Earth to the Sun. If you were there looking up at the sky, you'd see the Sun as a tiny dot like any other star in the sky. Once New Horizons finally reached Pluto in 2015, it got close enough to get some incredible pictures of the surface. It also collected important data and observations, like those strange red spots and that heart-shaped region. But Pluto gets even stranger, especially its orbit. Most other planets go around the Sun in almost perfect circles with the Sun close to the center. The Sun is nowhere near the center of Pluto's orbit, and the orbit is so stretched out that Pluto sometimes crosses into Neptune's path and gets closer to the Sun than the blue gas giant. So, the unusual effect of the strange orbit? Pluto sometimes has an atmosphere and sometimes not. When it's closer to the Sun, a thin atmosphere of nitrogen forms. But once the planet starts moving further away from our Sun, the atmosphere freezes and falls to the surface in an ice storm of epic proportions. Pluto is probably a lot smaller than you imagine. If you put it on a map of the Earth, it would only span about halfway across the US. Yet this little planet has 5 moons spinning around it. And life on Pluto would be one endless year for us humans. Imagine no birthdays your whole life. Since it was discovered in 1930, we still haven't seen it complete a full circle around the Sun. 1 year on Pluto is 248 Earth years, and we'll finally see that happen on March 23, 2178. Mark your calendar. Since Pluto got kicked out of the official planet club, Neptune became the last one in line. It's actually a big ball of ice and gas. So, like with the other gas giants, if you tried to land on this planet, you just keep going deeper and deeper into seemingly endless clouds and atmosphere. Funny thing about the blue planet, it might not have a rocky surface like you and I are used to, but its surface-level gravity is about the same as Earth's. Same can't be said for any other planet in the solar system. As we make our way closer to the Sun, we pass the next gas giant, Uranus, that non-conformist planet that goes around the Sun basically rolling on its side. One full orbit is 84 Earth years, so you might be lucky enough to celebrate your first birthday in your whole life there. Only one party, so you better make it count. And now we approach the jewel of the solar system, Saturn, the second biggest planet after Jupiter and another gas giant where you'd sink in an endless atmosphere if you tried to land a spaceship there. Saturn is the least dense planet of them all, meaning if you put it in a giant glass of water, it'd float. Those famous rings are made up of dust, ice, and rock. some as tiny as a grain of sand, others bigger than houses. But get this, Saturn's rings are raining down on the planet, enough to fill an Olympic-sized pool in a half an hour. At that rate, the famous blue ring system will disappear completely in 300 million years. By the way, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter also have rings. They're just not as visible and bright as Saturn's. Imagine combining all the planets into one. Now make it 2 times bigger. Still not as large as Jupiter. Scientists called it a failed star, since it's mostly made of helium and hydrogen, just like our Sun. But jumbo-sized Jupiter still isn't massive enough to kickstart the chemical processes that could turn it into a star. It's the fastest spinning planet, so it takes only 10 hours to complete a full rotation on its axis. Imagine trying to squeeze sleep, work, friends, hobbies, movies, shopping, your whole routine in less than half an Earth day. Magnificent tall mountains, the highest in the entire solar system. The most epic dust storms ever. Deep valleys, craters. I'm talking Mars, our potential home in the future. If you love sunsets, you'd definitely enjoy Martian ones. They're incredibly blue, while the sky throughout the day is pinkish red. Even though Mars is our closest neighbor, from the surface, the sun would look half the size it does from Earth. So, not as close as it seems. Oh, and if you always dreamed of becoming a basketball player, Mars is your place. The red planet's gravity is only 37% of Earth's, so you jump 3 times higher there. Venus is a planet of extremes. The hottest surface, the most volcanoes, the brightest planet, and the closest one to Earth. It's also the slowest spinning and barely rotates, making a day on Venus last 243 Earth days. You could literally walk faster before the planet makes a complete turn. Venus also rotates in the opposite direction that Earth does, so sunrises are in the west and the sun sets in the east. Mercury. It doesn't have any moons or rings, and we're talking about the smallest planet in the whole solar system. A year lasts only 88 days, so if you live there, you'd have a lot of birthdays. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, but it's actually not the hottest. That prize goes to Venus. Temperatures on Mercury don't get as high as on Venus because it doesn't have an atmosphere to trap heat from the Sun. What Mercury does have is wrinkles. Its iron core cooled and shrank, causing the surface to contract too, and leaving all those wrinkles. That, or because it's so close to the Sun with no SPF. Maybe. As you know, all the planets in our solar system orbit the Sun and bring a sense of order to the place. But guess what? There are 2 planets that could collide with each other and cause a cosmic catastrophe. Here's Neptune, the most faraway planet in our solar system. It's 17 times heavier and 4 times bigger than the Earth. It's 30 astronomical units from the Sun. 1 AU is the distance between the Sun and the Earth, so it's 30 times farther away from our star than we are. And Neptune makes a complete circle around the Sun in 164 years in an almost perfectly round orbit. Neptune is cold, calm, and stable. But there's one planet that can ruin this balance, Pluto. It's a dwarf planet covered in rocks and ice. It's 6 times lighter and 3 times smaller than the Moon. We're interested in its orbit. If you look at a map of the solar system from above, you can see that it's not round but elliptical, so it's a slightly flattened circle. At its furthest point, Pluto is 49 Earth-Sun distances away from the Sun. When it moves, it comes closer to the star. At its closest point, Pluto is about 29.5 AU from the Sun. That's closer than Neptune. So, hypothetically, they could collide. Let's look at this collision from the front row. A little closer, please? Good. Neptune and Pluto are slowly approaching each other. They are both very cold worlds, but they begin to interact with each other gravitationally. Just like 2 magnets, it warms them up from the inside. Neptune is a gas giant. There's no solid surface there, so there's not much change in it yet. But Pluto has a rocky surface. Because of Neptune's gravitational influence, it's starting to crack. Pluto experiences continuous earthquakes. This causes it to heat up even more. When Pluto almost touches the gas giant, it begins to crumble from the inside out. Plus, Neptune has a very dense atmosphere, so the dwarf planet begins to ignite from friction with the gases in the upper atmosphere. Pluto is now very hot on one side and very cold on the other. This causes severe deformation, and it begins to crumble. Half of the dwarf planet's fragments remain in Neptune's orbit. They will collide with each other until they turn into dust and become new rings of the big planet. Other fragments will burn up in Neptune's atmosphere, and the biggest rocks that remain of Pluto will fall through Neptune until they're completely burned into dust. Neptune literally ate Pluto and continued its orbit without any change, all because the gas giant is 20 times larger and much heavier than the dwarf planet. So this collision would do no harm to Pluto. But it couldn't have happened in the first place, because their orbits don't actually cross. Let's look at the map of the solar system again, not from above, but from the side. All 9 planets here are on a horizontal line from the Sun. The distance between them is great, and their orbits don't cross. Here's Pluto's orbit. You can see that it's tilted relative to the horizontal line of all the other planets. It starts at the top, then dives under the orbits of the planets and comes back. So Pluto can never collide with Neptune. Still, planetary collisions have occurred in our solar system before, and thanks to these collisions, life appeared on Earth. Let's go back in time to almost 4.5 billion years ago. This ball of hot lava is Earth. It just formed from a cloud of dust and began to cool. But then, a wandering planet the size of Mars appeared on the horizon. It's called Theia. It was inevitably approaching our planet. The collision with Theia happened at a perfect angle. If Theia had hit us head-on, both planets would have been smashed to pieces. But it hit us almost at a tangent. Theia knocked some of the matter out of the young Earth and crumbled into rubble itself. It could no longer continue its journey because the Earth caught it in a gravitational trap. A large fragment of this planet remained in our orbit. Smaller fragments crashed into each other, falling to Earth or joining the remains of Theia. The dust settled, and we can see the familiar picture, the Earth and the Moon. This is the main theory of how it came to be next to us. Scientists say that it was this collision that caused life to appear on Earth. Theia brought a lot of ice on it, which turned into water on our planet. The new moon stabilized Earth's rotation, and conditions on the planet became perfect for the emergence of life. Another collision could create a blast wave that would spread out thousands of light years. Stellar collision. This usually occurs in binary systems with a white dwarf and a regular star like our Sun. A white dwarf is the remains of a star that has gone out. As the stars get together, they start to move around each other in a spiral-like dance. The white dwarf pulls down the upper layers of the larger star. This hot plasma and stardust form a luminous disk. The two stars get closer and closer. When they finally merge, this causes a chain reaction in the core of the hot star. The mass of matter presses on the star's core too hard. This causes the innards of the combined star to heat up even more, and it expands, creating a supernova. This is one of the brightest events in the universe. The light from the explosion can be seen hundreds of light years away. Another spectacular view is the collision of a star with a black hole. Black holes are the heaviest objects in the universe, and their gravity is incredibly strong. So when a star and a black hole get close, the black hole starts eating the lighter matter of the star. The hot plasma, like spaghetti, heads toward the heart of the black nothingness. For an observer, this plasma seems to settle on the very edge of the black hole. It's called the event horizon. The thing is that time is much slower near such a heavy object, so we think the matter stays on the event horizon, but in fact it's long gone into the heart of the black hole. As they get even closer, the black hole starts to literally tear the star apart and swallows it whole. At this point, the black hole spits out about half of the star's mass in the form of a beam of energy right out of its black heart. The other half of the star's mass becomes the black beast's food. We know of many black holes in our universe. The heaviest of them usually lies in the centers of galaxies. They can be millions of times heavier than the Sun. But what would happen if two black holes collided with each other? Our scientists had the opportunity to observe such an event. Two black holes weighing 66 and 85 solar masses gradually approached each other. They danced together, bending the light passing by them. But then they merged into one enormous black hole, weighing 142 solar masses. That same second, the new black hole released gravitational waves into space with an energy of 9 solar masses. Scientists were able to catch these waves and observe the merging of the two black holes from the front seat. But this event actually happened about 17 billion years ago. We're only now seeing it because the particles of light and gravitational waves took so long to travel the distance of 17 billion light-years to Earth. Now consider a galactic scale collision. Literally, it's a collision of the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy. This event will happen in 4.5 billion years, so stay tuned. The Milky Way has almost 100 billion stars. Andromeda has about 1 trillion. As the galaxies approach one another, they'll make several circles around each other. At that time, some stars may be ejected from the galaxies like from a slingshot. Then Milky Way and Andromeda will begin to merge. One scenario here is that our solar system will collide with another star system from Andromeda. In this case, there could be a stellar collision and a supernova afterwards. Our world would be destroyed. Another option is that the Sun would be ejected into dark space. In this case, we may not even notice the difference. All we'll see on Earth is a gradually disappearing starry sky, as our solar system will travel through dark space away from the home galaxy. But the most likely scenario is when the galaxies merge, it'll be completely painless for us. In fact, the space is very wide, and there's room for all the stars from both galaxies. The only difference is that we'll see a lot of new stars in the night sky, along with flying saucers from Andromeda. Nah, not really. But it's not the collision of galaxies that we should be worried about, it's our Sun. In 4.5 billion years, it'll become a red giant. It'll expand, swallowing up the nearest planets. Earth will probably be the first planet near the Sun. It'll be so hot that all life will simply disappear, and no one will be able to watch the galactic collision. Have we found another civilization? Is that a door to someone's home on another planet? Can we peek through the windows? After all, it was NASA's Curiosity rover that sent this image to Earth, and right now, this rover is exploring the surface of Mars. Unfortunately, astronomers were fast to disappoint us. They claimed that it was just a natural part of the Martian landscape. There are several clues that made them think it wasn't a real door. For example, it's tiny, a mere 3 feet high. But it might simply mean the Martians aren't that tall, you may object. But scientists keep insisting that what looks like a door is actually an opening in a rock created by natural forces, like winds and erosion. The thing is, if you look at the rock attentively, you may notice strata, the layers of silt that stand out because they're harder than the surrounding material. These strata dip here on the left and a bit higher on the right. They likely appeared around 4 billion years ago in a river or a wind-blown dune. Since the strata became visible, powerful Martian winds have eroded them even more, and now you can see that they disappear inside the door. And look at this. See those cracks? Yeah, those. That's how rocks weather on the red planet. This small cave probably formed when several fractures crossed the strata. A pretty large boulder might have fallen out under its own weight, and this created the door-shaped opening. Now, this theory is quite plausible, because even though the gravity on Mars isn't as strong as on Earth, it's still strong enough to do it. Besides, see that rock to the right of the opening? It has a suspiciously smooth vertical edge. It must be the culprit. It probably fell out not so long ago, and Martian winds haven't got rid of it yet. And winds on Mars can be exceptionally powerful. This planet is infamous for its intense dust storms. Sometimes they kick up so much dust that you can see it through a telescope on Earth. Such storms occur every year and cover continent-sized areas. They also last for weeks at a time. But besides these annual storms, there are even larger storms that happen much more rarely, but they're more powerful and way more intense. Those are called global dust storms because they encircle the entire planet. But even if you got caught in the most severe storm on Mars, it wouldn't be as terrible as you might think. The wind speed on the worst Martian storms reaches 60 miles an hour tops. Hurricane-force winds on our planet can be twice that speed. You should also keep in mind that the atmosphere on the red planet is 1% as dense as the atmosphere on Earth. That's why, if you decided to fly a kite on Mars, you'd need the wind to be much faster than on Earth. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to get the kite in the air. In other words, even though it's quite windy on Mars, it doesn't feel as intense as on our home planet. Oh, by the way, You might have noticed I keep calling Mars the red planet. Why? Look, our neighbor is covered in dust, soil, and rock that is rich in iron oxide. That's what gives the surface of the planet its trademark red hue. And look, there's the trademark. Nah, just kidding. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. Not so far away from the star, you might say, and still, it's a cold and deserted world. The average temperature on its surface is minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you ever visit one of its poles during the wintertime, bring a lot of warm clothing, because the temperatures are likely to drop to minus 220 degrees there. In the summer, though, you might feel very comfortable in some regions. There, the temperatures can rise to 70 degrees, not very different from what we're used to. Mars is one of the most explored space bodies in the solar system. At the moment, NASA has 2 rovers roaming the red landscapes, Curiosity and Perseverance. There's also one lander called InSight and helicopter Ingenuity, nicknamed Ginny. Perseverance is the most advanced and largest rover ever sent to another world. The journey to the red planet took 203 days, and Ginny traveled to Mars attached to the belly of Perseverance. Sounds cozy. And now, I'm going to tell you something really curious. Let's say you're a Babylonian who lived around 5,000 years ago. Babylonia was an empire in ancient Mesopotamia. Just think back to 6th grade. Anyway, your neighbor comes up to you and says, "What day is it today?" And what do you answer? "It's Mars Day." Wait, what? When the ancient Babylonians created the week, they decided to divide it into 7 parts. Each day got named after some space body, like the Moon, the Sun, Venus, and so on. Mars Day was on Tuesday. The Babylonians believed that each of these space objects influenced their lives on the day named after it. And since Mars was red in color, they associated it with aggression. That's why on Tuesdays, they had special ceremonies to avoid the influence of the unfriendly planet. Indeed, Mars might seem unfriendly to a tired traveler. Its atmosphere is very thin. Its volume is a near 1% of the atmosphere on Earth. In other words, there's 99% less air to breathe on the red planet. Mars's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. At such high concentrations, it's toxic for us humans. And if you were looking for some oxygen to breathe on Mars, you'd come away empty-handed. There's only 0.1% of oxygen in the air on the red planet. That's definitely not enough for you to survive there. At the moment, Mars has 2 moons, Deimos and Phobos. Astronomers think they may be asteroids once caught in the gravitational field of the planet. The moons are shaped like potatoes. That's because their mass is too little for gravity to give them a spherical form. Potatoes, eh? Maybe they should be renamed mashed and au gratin. One day, Mars will get a ring of its own. It might happen in the next 20 to 40 million years. Will Brightside be there? Stay tuned. Mars's gravitational forces will tear apart the planet's largest moon, Phobos. Hey, it really will get mashed. Some chunks of the former moon will crash into Mars, and others will break apart and create the ring around the planet. This ring might exist for at least 100 million years. The surface of Mars is cut by a huge canyon system known as Valles Marineris. Sounds like a pasta sauce. If it were on Earth, it'd stretch all the way from New York to California, over 3,000 miles. At its widest part, the largest canyon on Mars is 200 miles, and it reaches 4 miles at its deepest point. If you still have difficulties imagining the sheer size of this natural phenomenon, here you go. Valles Marineris is 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon on Earth. Now, since we're on the subject of gigantic things, let's talk about Olympus Mons. This is the largest volcano in the solar system, and it's on Mars too. It's 3 times as tall as Mount Everest on our planet, and that's the tallest mountain above sea level. And the base of Olympus Mons is as large as the state of New Mexico. Now, scientists think there could have been water on Mars in the past. What made them think so? They found lots of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could only form in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet, but Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface. Now, it only exists in the form of water ice. You can find it just under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar ice cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. So, as a vacation spot, I think I'll pass.
There are almost no similarities between Earth and Jupiter. Ours is a sweet, small planet with plants and cute pandas. Jupiter is a giant gas horror with furious hurricanes which never subside. And if you fall into this planet, you might literally fly through it. But what would happen if our Earth was the size of the father of the solar system? Oh, this is going to be fun. Jupiter is a planet so big that I bet you can't even imagine its scale. Its radius is about 11 times the radius of Earth, and it's about 316 times more massive. So, to turn Earth into another Jupiter, we'd need to increase its radius by 11 times. If the planet's density remained the same, then the mass of our new Earth would increase greatly. Actually, it'd be as much as 4 times larger than Jupiter's. Of course, these changes wouldn't go smoothly. The very first thing that we would immediately notice, nope, not the size, gravity. It would increase by about 11 times compared to old Earth's. Scientists say we can actually survive on a planet with greater gravity, but only if it's less than 5 times stronger than what we have now. Well, let's assume that we're daredevils, always ready to challenge nature. What would our life be like? Well, not very pleasant. After each step, you'd have to sit down on a bench and take a break, as if you've just run a marathon. Yes, it would be that hard to walk. Oh, and good luck with getting up later. In order to somehow move around this planet, we'd have to pump up very strong muscles. No more problems with junk food, 'cause you'd have to become a heavy lifter just to get to the refrigerator. The force of gravity affects not only movement, but also the size of everything. Do you know that many astronauts gain some height due to weightlessness in space? So if you're worried about being short, here's a solution for you. On the other hand, strong gravity would make us all shorter. This would go not only for humans, but for everything on our planet. Trees would become very small. To grow upward, they would have to move water from their roots to branches, which would be unrealistic with such gravity. So they'd all turn into little bushes. Also, no more mountains. Even the largest ones would become very small. But at least now, everyone would be able to conquer Everest. This would also apply to animals. Our pets would have to quickly evolve into pumped-up corgis just to be able to walk somehow. Oh, and say goodbye to birds, of course. If you think that's not enough suffering, let's add another thing. It would be very difficult for us to breathe. Atmospheric pressure would increase dramatically. That's because Earth would start to pull air toward itself with great force. You'd literally feel the weight of it on your shoulders. Remember what I said about taking a break after each step? Now, imagine that you'd also have to breathe through a pillow. Yeah. And that's not all. Atmospheric pressure plays an important role in the behavior of water molecules. It would be much more difficult for water to boil or turn into ice. Most icebergs would melt, and it's possible that we'd have no more clouds too. All water vapor would come crashing down on us in giant torrents of rain. We'd be lucky if we didn't get flooded instantly. But, oddly enough, there would also be some advantages. For example, everything around us would become much more spacious. Assuming we didn't get flooded, there would even be a bunch of deserted areas on the planet. Maybe land prices would finally fall. But these unexplored areas would most likely remain unexplored, since we'd hardly be able to travel across seas and oceans. Not only because moving across the water would be incredibly difficult, but also because all water bodies on the planet would become 10 times larger. The very thought of getting lost in the ocean is frightening, but imagine if it was 10 times deeper and bigger? Uh-oh. So, no more sailing. and forget about flying by plane or visiting space ever again. But it seems like it's still not all. If Earth was the size of Jupiter, we'd also have volcanoes raging everywhere. Due to the increase in its mass, Earth would become terribly unstable. All extinct volcanoes would become active again, and there would be lava and poisonous gases everywhere. In 1883, there was the most destructive eruption in the history of humankind, the eruption of the Krakatoa volcano. It occurred on one small island, but people all over the planet could feel the consequences. The eruption destroyed the island, triggered many tsunamis, and clouds of poisonous gases spread for miles. Now imagine this, but 10 times worse. That's what would happen on our Jupiter-sized Earth. It would probably be similar to the fall of the Chicxulub meteorite, the one that wiped dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. Then, poisonous gases spread all over the planet, causing one of the greatest massive extinctions in the history of Earth. Oh, and we would also lose the magnetic field, like the cherry on top of the cake. The magnetic field is very important for life on Earth. According to Rory Barnes from the University of Washington, it shields life on the planet from the nastiness of space, which means all sorts of radiation and solar winds. There's a molten iron core inside our planet that is responsible for producing the magnetic field. If the amount of pressure on this core increased due to gravity, it could solidify. And because of this, Earth's magnetic field would disappear. We would be exposed to the effects of cosmic radiation. Too scary to even imagine. Alright, so now we know that living on this new Earth would be a real nightmare. But what about outer space? You've probably heard that Jupiter, thanks to its strong gravity, protects us from asteroids. Well, this would become our job. Jupiter experiences about 24,000 collisions a year, and now it'd be our destiny. Do you remember me mentioning the Chicxulub meteorite? Similar tragedies happen to our planet once every 100 million years or so. But if it became the size of Jupiter, these guys would visit us every Friday. Also, we'd have to say bye-bye to the moon. Our natural satellite is too close to us. So if Earth grew in size, it would be a real catastrophe. We would literally watch the moon being torn apart in the sky. Of course, after that, all these fragments would crash into us. One of the theories claims that billions of years ago, the moon somehow separated from Earth, and its pieces gathered into a ball. Now, it would be like watching its creation rewind. And even if the moon survived, somehow remaining in Earth's orbit, the changes in the tides would still be dramatic. The consequences of these changes would be very unpredictable, but probably a bunch of tsunamis would be some of them. On the other hand, we'd probably gain a couple of new moons. Jupiter has as many as 79 of them. It would probably be a spectacular view, if only gas clouds from all those volcanic eruptions didn't block it. Also, the appearance of a second giant planet would have significant consequences for the whole solar system. Don't worry, other planets wouldn't crash into us. Many people underestimate just how far the planets are from one another. But still, the new Earth would shift the orbits of other planets a little and affect the rotation speed. And Earth itself would rotate around the Sun much more slowly because of its huge mass. For example, 1 year equals 12 Earth years on Jupiter. All this, of course, would greatly affect seasons and the climate in general. So, would there be life on Earth? Bold of you to even ask this question. But if one day we do manage to find a habitable super-Earth close to Jupiter in size, it would be very interesting to take a look at it.
Buckle up, fellow space enthusiasts, because we're about to uncover the celestial secrets that have been unveiled this year. From giant stars to organic molecules, this year is going great for astronomers. So let's catch up on all the excitement you might have missed in 2023. First of all, we've discovered some real astral monsters. Imagine looking up at the night sky and seeing stars that are not just big, but absolutely enormous. Scientists have been using a special telescope called the James Webb Space Telescope to explore the early days of the universe. And during their adventure, scientists stumbled upon ancient stars that are 10,000 times bigger than our sun. Yes, you heard it right, 10,000 times. These giants of the stellar world were some of the very first stars ever to form in the universe, billions of years ago. Imagine a globular cluster as a massive cosmic crew, where each group consists of a whopping 100,000 to 1 million members. These clusters are like giant family gatherings, with all the stars being born around the same time. But what makes these newly discovered monsters so special? Well, their cores, or their central parts, are way hotter than what we see in stars today. Scientists think that this intense heat might be due to a lot of hydrogen burning at really high temperatures. It's like they're having a galactic barbecue party. Something fascinating happens in these globular clusters. The smaller stars crash into the supermassive ones and gain extra energy, like a power-up. But here's the twist. Most of these clusters are now getting old, and the supermassive stars disappeared a long time ago. We can only see hints of their existence in the clusters we observe today. Scientists study them by just the mysterious traces of their grand presence. The discovery of these monster stars is incredibly important for our understanding of the universe. If scientists can gather more evidence to confirm their existence, it would be a major breakthrough. It would help us learn more about globular clusters and how supermassive stars form in general. But that was only the first fascinating discovery of 2023. Although the next one is kinda sad. You know those beautiful rings that make Saturn look so fancy? Well, guess what? They might disappear in the not-so-distant future, astronomically speaking. NASA's Cassini mission, which explored Saturn from 2004 to 2017, gathered some fascinating data about the rings. During Cassini's grand finale, when it did some cool maneuvers between Saturn, scientists noticed something surprising. The rings were losing a lot of mass every second. Tons of it. That means this magnificent halo will only stick around for a few 100 million more years, at most. That may seem like a long time for humans, but in the grand scheme of the universe, it's just a blink of an eye. The important thing is that we've learned that huge rings like Saturn's don't last forever. They eventually fade away. Oh, well, at least you and I personally won't catch this moment. Scientists have a fun theory about what will happen when Saturn's rings disappear. They think that the other ice and gas giants in our solar system, like Uranus and Jupiter, might have once had massive rings too. But over time, those rings wore down and became more like the thin, wispy bands of asteroids like what Uranus has now. Saturn's rings are mostly made of ice, but they also have a sprinkling of rocky dust. This dust comes from asteroids and teeny tiny meteoroids crashing into the celestial objects and breaking apart. It's like a snowstorm of icy particles and space debris. The research also revealed that Saturn's rings appeared long after the planet itself formed. They were still forming when dinosaurs roamed the Earth. So, in terms of astronomical age, they're actually quite young, only a few 100 million years old. This discovery has got scientists all excited because it means something dramatic happened in Saturn's past to create this stunning icy disk. But this is a mystery waiting to be solved. Scientists want to figure out what exactly caused the rings to form and why they have such a breathtaking structure. Let's hope they'll figure it out. But moving on to something more optimistic, we have another exciting space news. Recently, scientists have been studying one of the most distant galaxies in the universe, and they found something amazing: organic molecules. The galaxy in question has a long name, SPT 041847. It's over 12 billion light-years away from our little blue planet. Can you even imagine that distance? It's the farthest galaxy ever known, where complex organic molecules have been found. That's why looking at this galaxy is like looking at something from when the universe was just a baby. We have no idea what this galaxy looks like now. The light that has reached us is what it looked like when the universe was only 1.5 billion years old. Imagine being able to see things from so far in the past. So what they found is something with a very complicated name. A polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon molecule, or simply PAH molecule. You might be wondering, what in the world is that? Well, guess what? You can actually find these molecules right here on our planet. They can be in things like the smoke from car engines or even forest fires. PAH molecules are made up of chains of carbon atoms. And here's the super cool part. They're considered the basic building blocks for life. Imagine that. Life's building blocks. Those tiny carbon chains being discovered in a galaxy that's so far away. That's like finding a needle in a haystack. They also found out that gas floating around in that galaxy is filled with heavy elements. That's a big deal because it suggests that many stars have come and gone there, creating all these amazing elements. This means that this galaxy can be potentially rich in many other elements too. This discovery opens up a world of possibilities and raises so many exciting questions. How did these molecules form in a galaxy so distant? And since we're looking into the past, what could have happened to these organic molecules during this time? Could they have evolved into life? We're only scratching the surface of the incredible things waiting to be uncovered. By the way, if it's so far, how did scientists even manage to discover something like that? Well, they had the instrument called the James Webb Space Telescope. This fancy telescope was recently launched and has superpowers when it comes to observing the universe. So when the scientists were studying this faraway galaxy, they had a little problem. The light coming from those distant objects was so faint that it was hard to see or detect. But guess what? They had a brilliant idea to solve this. They used something called gravitational lensing, which is like a special power of nature's magnifying glass. Imagine two galaxies lining up perfectly, just like in a photo shoot. The light from the faraway galaxy, the background one, travels towards us. But on its journey, it passes through the foreground galaxy, which is like a giant space lens. And guess what? The foreground galaxy's gravity bends the light, just like a magnifying glass, making it bigger and brighter. It's like having a cosmic zoom lens for our telescopes. This bending of light creates a super cool shape called an Einstein ring. It's like a halo, or a ring of light surrounding the foreground galaxy, basically a nature's way of showing off its magical powers. With gravitational lensing and these beautiful Einstein rings, scientists can see distant objects more clearly and learn amazing things about the universe. And thanks to all that, they managed to uncover the hidden chemical interactions from the early galaxies. Isn't that incredible? The scientists are beyond excited about this discovery. They never expected to find such complex organic molecules in a galaxy that's incredibly distant. Who knows? Maybe this is just the beginning of a thrilling cosmic journey. So, keep your eyes on the stars, fellow space explorers. The universe is full of surprises, and who knows what other mind-blowing discoveries await us out there. Let's hope we'll learn even more in the future.